So I'll present the project firEUrisk. It's a project that started 2 years ago in April 2021. So we are already in the middle of the project. The title of the project is Developing Holistic Risk-Wise Strategy for Wildfire Management. It's a quite large project. It has 38 partners from 18 different countries from all over Europe, not only from Southern Europe, but also from Central and Northern Europe. And we have also partners from Canada, United States, and Australia. These partners come from different backgrounds. We are an interdisciplinary team in scientific term. We have scientists from different backgrounds, as is shown in this slide. The project is managed by a steering committee. I'm the coordinator, but we have also Emilio Chuvieco from the University of Alcalá, who is scientific coordinator, and 2 colleagues from Greece who help in the technical and data management of the project. The objectives of the project are quite wide because the call was very ambitious, and we were asked to look and disseminate an integrated science-based strategy for wildfire risk management in Europe. And we built the project around 3 concepts. One is wildfire risk assessment. The second is the reduction of the wildfire risk conditions, and then prepare the society to the new conditions and adapt to the changing socioeconomic changes that are foreseen. And this we intend to do in close collaboration between not only researchers, but also practitioners, policymakers, and citizens. The project is built around these 3 concepts that I mentioned: risk assessment, risk reduction, and risk adaptation. And this is what we are trying to do with the objective of increasing the capacity and resilience and somehow influence EU and national policies. This is done taking all factors of risk into account. We started with the wildfire risk assessment, and for this we want to go beyond the concept of fire danger that is usually used in fire management based on the meteorological conditions. So we are looking at the vulnerability and looking at the impacts of the fire, so to assess all its components. Our project is looking mostly in the wildland-urban interface areas, because that is where people live, that's where fire can get them and eventually cause accidents. And as I said, we are working with the population and with the citizens to include them in this wildfire management. The second point is the risk reduction. So we are looking at methods that can reduce the risk of wildfire. And one of them is reduce human ignitions, because they are the most important cause of the fires. We want also to prepare the communities to resist the fires, to improve their resilience, for example, the quality of the buildings. And we are studying previous wildfires to learn lessons from them. This we have done already for the years of 21 and 2022. And we are also working in the improvement of training and preparedness of the stakeholders, including citizens. For risk adaptation, we are looking at future scenarios, and not only regarding climate, but also socioeconomic scenarios, and see how the risk drivers will be changed in these future scenarios, and propose plans to adapt the already fire-prone regions that exist, and also new fire-prone regions that are creating now. And we want to work especially in the wildland-urban interface areas and the cases of extreme fire behavior, because these are the ones that cause problems. And this is being done in an integrated form and in communication between all stakeholders. We want to produce solutions and results that can be integrated by the existing services at the European level, but also at the national levels. And this is something that we are working already in order that the authorities can use the results of the project in the future. We are also looking at the cascading effects related to wildfires that may occur in some cases, like, for example, erosion problems. And this we are doing in a network with all the wildfire research community, mainly in Europe, but also out of Europe. We are capitalizing on the results of the knowledge management platforms and working with the European boards that are working on this. This is the structure of the project. We have different work packages. This is quite straightforward. I'll not go into detail with this. And this is the management structure of the project. This is quite complex. Besides the steering committee that I already mentioned, we have several committees that help to integrate the activity with the project and within the project, and also to work with other institutions and other persons out of the project, namely other wildfire risk projects. We have a demonstration plan that covers the entire Europe. We have 3 what we call pilot sites in Southern Europe, one in Portugal, one in Spain, and one in Greece, one in Central Europe, and one in Northern Europe in Sweden. Besides these pilot sites, we have considered the entire territory of Europe as a pilot site, because we want to propose solutions that can be tested and applied not only in these countries, but also at a European scale. And this is something that we are doing now. We have already, during these 2 years, produced some interesting results. One of them is the methodology to classify the vegetation for Europe. This is a work that we did, bringing together previous studies done at the international level, and we proposed a classification for vegetation and for fuels in Europe. And we produce a full map for Europe. This is the product at 1 square kilometer scale, and this is being adopted by different projects as well. And we have also recently published a work on the wildfire risk assessment that considers, as this diagram shows, all components of wildfire risk. And we have already developed a product that incorporates all these elements. For example, in the first picture, we are looking at ignitions, human-made ignitions, and also natural ignitions. The second is the full map that is general for Europe, but it's more detailed for each country, with more resolution in the different countries. We have also models to estimate from satellite data and from meteorological data the moisture content of the vegetation. And from all these elements and the terrain and the meteorology, we can estimate the propagation of the fire and estimate the intensity of the fire that in a given day. This is an example where we can assess what will be the fire line intensity of fires occurring in a given day. And looking at the ecological values of the environment, we can then assess what can be the potential damage and evaluate the risk. And a figure on the right is the final product, that is the integrated risk index that takes into account all these components and provides for a given day in Europe where the risk of fire exists and where the damage can be higher because of the presence of human activities, the presence of human assets, presence of ecological values, and if a fire occurs, what can be the risk of those regions. So this is one of the products that we have, and we are now developing these solutions for the entire Europe. You can get more information about the project at these places that I'm showing here, and I welcome any questions that you have about the project. I'm already collaborating. Actually, I'm a partner of FireLog project, which is a concerted action that is promoting the networking between all projects that exist at present in Europe regarding wildfire problems. This network is composed by firEUrisk, the project that I'm coordinating that I just presented, and yes, by these 3 innovation actions from the Green Deal program. And we have been working with these projects, and we had several meetings. Actually, in the FireLog project, I am the chairman of the research integration board that is discussing with the other projects topics of common interest, and one of them is precisely this creation of the full map for Europe, because this is a basic requirement for everyone that is working in wildfires. The second is this concept of risk and management of risk. And we are also discussing this problem internally in the project and with our colleagues from other projects as well. A third problem that we have been looking at is the involvement of stakeholders, because this is very important in this field, because we cannot work, let's say, looking for solutions that are not relevant, that are not applicable, and are not used. So we are sharing our networks of stakeholders, and we are also working in common in the demonstration areas, because each project has its demo areas, and some of them, although may not be the same or may not be common, but of course they are in the same countries or in the same regions, and they address very similar problems. And that's something that we are already working together. This is a huge problem, and so all help and all collaborative effort is welcome. And what I can tell you is that the situation that I see is different from country to country, from region to region. And for example, we here in Portugal, we are very well connected with the stakeholders and even with the policymakers and with the population. We have great exchanges, and this helps very much for our work to be recognized and accepted. But we understand that this is not the same situation in other countries, because the problem is new. The people and the authorities are not yet well prepared to accept sometimes changes in their methods, in their ideas. So every help that you can provide is good. We are very much let's say, involved with the European level, because we think that after the projects, if we don't have an anchor at the European level, some of our products will be lost, at least will not be profited by Europe. May be used in some countries, but not at the European level. And we want to assure that. What we are doing is to work closely with the GRC at the scientific level, and also with DG ECHO at a more operational level, in the sense that we are having dialogue with these two entities in order to exchange our points of view, to exchange methodologies, and to collaborate. Anything that, of course, we are working with other projects. We are working with citizens in different countries, but every help that you can provide for this effort is good.
Perfect.
I can tell you that, for example, now we are facing these fires in Portugal these days, and we are trying to contact the authorities and working with them. I'm quite often called by the media to give my comments and assessment about the situation, and this is quite important, because it's an opportunity to give some ideas, some guidelines also to the citizens, and it's a form of pedagogy and of science in this case. Again, this varies from place to place. I'll give you our example here in Portugal. We are open to the citizens, and we invite them to participate in our the programs and products. For example, we request help from them about the fires, about the incidents, about the case that they report, or solutions that they require. For example, in our research group, we developed some methods to protect houses against the fire, for example, a system of sprinklers. And we have been requested by citizens to know how they can use, how they can apply these systems. And when we go to the field, when we study fires, we interview lots of people, lots of citizens, and get their point of view, their perspective of the problems. And this is a way that we have to interact with them. And we also try as long as possible to produce texts and documents that can be accessible to the citizens. For example, if we produce a report or an article, scientific article, we normally do a short version of it in our own language that can be accessible to the person, the citizen, at least to know what has been studied there. And if the person is more interested in knowing more in detail, that person can ask us. We do this especially for the operational people, let's say for the firefighters and other agents. But we try also to access the school children, the students, and other types of citizens. I can give you an example. June, we had what we called an open day of our fire lab. In that day, we received hundreds of people from all over the country who came to visit our laboratory and to see what we are doing, what we are investigating, and knowing and learning what we are concerned, what are the problems that we study. And our main interest is to on the fire safety, let's say, to avoid that citizens can be hurt by the fire. And this is what we try to teach the people. And this, of course, is of great interest for them. Oh, it includes, because, as I said, we are looking for solutions to adapt for the future conditions. And we know that we cannot continue doing business as is usual. And we cannot continue with these very flammable species like you mentioned, pine. Here in Portugal, we also have lots of eucalyptus. The problem is not of the trees, it's mainly of the way they are managed, because when people don't care to leave, let's say, space between the trees, leave the ground rid of vegetation by full reduction. So that's when these, let's say, extensions of territory become very flammable and very vulnerable. And in the project, we are looking at different methods to reduce this risk. One of them is, of course, the creation of buffer zones, creation of mosaics, the plantation of trees and other species that are more fire resistant, that can create these corridors or these areas where a large fire can be, if not stopped, but at least reduce its intensity. And this is something that we are advocating for, especially the countries of the Southern Europe, and recommending the people from the Central and Northern Europe to avoid these errors, these mistakes, let's say, because sometimes in the interest of economy, people disregard the safety of the territory and the protection of the people regarding this issue of the forest fires.
Okay, so thank you for the invite. So I will talk about a project called Superb that is about forest restoration in Europe. It's an European Green Deal project, so there is quite strong political attention to this project. As you know, Green Deal is a key element of the European policy, and this project is quite massive, as it is a 4-year project with 20 million euros, 7 countries, 36 partners. So unfortunately, I'm not the leader of the project. The project is led by EFI, and the leader is Elisabeth Potzewager. And so the main aim is to restore forest landscape by creating an enabling environment for the implementation and for looking of forest restoration. Basically, what does it mean? It means that we want to compile the governance and the stakeholder engagement together with the knowledge on biodiversity and ecosystem management we have in the network. Also consider innovative finance, because the idea is ready to upscale the work we are producing now. So we collect the knowledge from all these sources, from all the countries in Europe. At the same time, we want it not to be just a European research project compiling data at European level without being working on the ground. So we have demonstration areas. So today I will try to show you the 2 levels of the project. The this compiling effort and the demonstration site to implement the work on the field. So we have in this project 12 large demo areas in 12 countries. The advantage of this is that we are gathering a very large range of forest ecosystem. We have all the broadleaf forest, we have dying spruce forest, we have maritime pine planted forest, we have close to nature forest, and each of these forests is facing trouble. Usually the main stressor are drought, especially for species that are in areas where drought is becoming higher and higher. Drought often induce bark beetles that kill the trees that are weak due to the drought. Intense harvesting in areas where the wood demand is increasing a lot with no sustainable management. And climate change as a whole is an issue because you have more extreme events, not only more drought, but you can have hail, you can have heavy snow, you can have many unexpected events that forests are not used to face. And in this project, so we have these 12 areas representative of many of the issues we have all over Europe. And we have also a solution. We have a large range of solutions tested. Reforestation or afforestation action, planting trees where we had some dieback, enhancing structural diversity. So I will give you an example with the case in France. Forest education. So basically, we are training people to other alternatives they are not used to. Landscape diversification. As you may know, a way to increase resilience of landscape is to have a more diverse land use and diverse forest management options. Advanced monitoring. To be able to take the good decision, we need to have a good monitoring of what's ongoing. And also habitat restoration for specific species when we have some umbrella species, so we have to work for them. As you can see on the map, in Europe of the pilot case, so we have very good representativeness of the forest cases in Europe. I will give a focus on the French case because I'm from France. We are coordinating this living lab with Alliance Forêt-Bois Coopérative and in MAIA Research Institute. So as you can see on the picture, in the land of Gascogne, the forest is mainly made of pure, intensively managed maritime pine stands. And so we seek a way to increase the resilience and preserve all the ecosystem services in this area. So the map you can see on the right is about 50,000 area, a 15,000 hectare area. This area was selected before 22 fires. So in 2022, we had huge fires. You can see at the bottom right of the map in red, the burnt area. So we will have some specific work there to address the impact of this fire on biodiversity. So in this area, what do we aim to do? We aim to monitor biodiversity, especially the biodiversity associated to hedgerows of broadleaf. So you can see on the picture, you have mainly maritime pine plantation, and in the middle of the picture, you have broadleaf, mainly oaks, that are left over, and that are kind of hotspot of biodiversity, and we try to increase that. How do we proceed? We will install pilot hedgerows to test patterns. So basically, we want to have ready to implement methods that forester can implement all over the 1 million hectare area of maritime pine. And to demonstrate that it works, we will install 10 kilometers of these hedgerows with the funds of the project on private land. And then we will see how successful we are within the 3 years to install these hedgerows, because we need to convince private owner of the benefit. How to convince private owner of the benefits? We have the research institute INRA with dealing with the biodiversity inventory. And so there is a rigorous sampling strategy in mature hedgerows that is ongoing. With this massive inventory, we will better understand so basically on these hedgerows, to know how efficient they are to improve connectivity and to improve the habitat for biodiversity. We will have an intensive monitoring on existing ones, because on the new one, trees are too small to monitor biodiversity. So we are sampled 36 sites where we'll make the inventory with the Research Institute of INRAE of flying insect, arthropod, reptile, birds, bats, microhabitat, butterflies, small mammals. And all this inventory of fauna and flora will give us the biodiversity value of these hedgerows. And this will demonstrate or not the benefit of having this such hedgerows in forest, and also how much it can improve the resilience of forest, because it can be a reserve for predators of enemies of forest. It can also facilitate, prevent some wind damages, and we're also questioning the benefit on fire, as it is mainly broadleaf that are in these hedgerows. So this was the case study we have in France. All the information we will collect from this case study will be gathered at European level. And so the 12th case study will report providing guidelines and recommendations and tools at the European level. It will be an accessible online toolbox, but it won't be to pay to restore biodiversity all over Europe. You can say what kind of where you want to do it, and you will have a list of actions that can be funded and some project opportunities for restoration all over Europe or in your area. Online multi-language forest ecosystem, restoration gateway. So this is the system I just presented now. And the marketplace where people who want to fund some restoration activity can find a project to on the field to make this restoration work. So at the end, we will have a large and powerful multi-stakeholder network that will upscale the transformative restoration we are promoting in the pilot. For example, the hedgerows we will test with the 10 kilometers in the French case. We have already identified a funding scheme so that all over the pine plantation it can be used. So we want to upscale it to the 1 million hectare of planted forest in southwest of France. Thank you. That was my presentation.
Thank you for having this webinar. It's an excellent initiative. I want to thank you. And I want to present myself. Besides the long biography, I work in the soil team in Joint Research Center, and most of my work has been focused on the follow-up of the healthiness of the soils. Among one of those soil degradation issues is soil erosion. That's why I'm going to focus, or where I'm going to focus my presentation. It's important to highlight this context of the window of disturbance model. Most of the works on fire usually focus on the moment of the event, on the forest management, and I'm talking about the aftermath of the fire. So basically immediately after the fire, because the vegetation goes away, the temperature reaches high temperatures on the soil, there's an increase on the sensitivity of the soil, an increase of erosion that will go back to background levels as soon as the vegetation recovers and the soil goes back to normality. We're not supposed to have that much soil erosion in forest areas, so therefore it's always a big mess when the fire's happening. So basically, we try to, in this work, to provide an overall view of the potential of soil erosion at the European scale, taking into consideration the fires of 2017. We follow up the recovery of the soil of the vegetation during 5 years, and we made some scenarios of post-fire mitigation in order to try to identify the potential of the mitigation measures. I don't want to go very thorough in here, but basically we just pick up very known soil erosion model. We applied it to some factors like a fire factor to the soil erosion model based on a lot of peer-reviewed studies, and we used the typical remote sensing data of burn severity and fire prescription to assess pre-fire soil erosion, post-fire soil erosion, and post-fire with mitigation measures. We also develop a very simple indicator. We call it the R-cover for the assessment of the stage of recovery after fire, because it's important to integrate this in our models. And also the fire factor, let's call it like this, which is the C factor in the universal soil loss equation, according to the severity, because different land covers react differently in what concerns erosion, and the recovery it's very different. So for the first post-fire year, you have the map on the right. We got this, of course, because that that focus on the areas that burned in Europe that year, we have a higher soil erosion incidence in Portugal, Spain, Italy, and Greece. Basically, this is presented in a fishnet, otherwise you couldn't see it at this scale. And we did the simulation for 5 years, and then we actually tried to validate the post-fire year with field studies that actually were only available in the Iberian Peninsula. And we have to say that probably there's a slight overestimation, but it's already substantial information in the sense that we can provide relative areas with higher or low probability of having erosion in those locations. So what are our results? Basically, we understand on the panel on the left what is the expected pre-fire erosion. We did a calculation for these specific areas for the 3 years before the fire, and we calculated for after. You see this increase, like the window of disturbance model that I showed you before, this increase in erosion. But after the 4 or 5 years, the erosion is not near, the estimated erosion is not near the pre-fire conditions. So this means that probably this problem will extend for a little bit further. On the right side panel, you'll see the different types of mitigation measures we assessed, and they show that these mitigation measures can help you to reach out to the recovery by the 4th post-fire year. This means you can have a very good potential to reach out to what could be the type of recovery in a shorter period of time. The scenarios of mitigation are very basic, are if I treat everything. The second one is if I treat based on the burn severity, and the third one is if I treat in the base of the modeling results that are obtained in this study. During our investigation, we look into very big scars that we thought that could be interesting and highlighting the issues of this work, uncertainties, errors, because we are talking about the modeling exercise, although it's after an assessment by data gathered through time, like F-cover. So basically, we realized that for some areas there is, like in the case of Portugal, in the upper part, there is a constant increase in the vegetation cover, and therefore there's a reduction of the post-fire soil erosion through time. However, in Attica, that actually burned recently, you can find some evidences of post-fire management with some time that actually remove the cover and enhance, possibly in the later stage, this post-fire erosion, or in Italy, where another fire happened in the same period within the monitoring period. So there's 4 years separating these two fires. So here we verified that actually we need to take into consideration more than one event through time. We actually verified a sharp increase in the soil erosion after the wildfire, about to 11.8-fold. That after the 5-year assessment, soil erosion was not fully recovered. And after this 5 years, actually 4 years, let's say, 46% of the burnt area presented vegetation cover below the pre-fire. So this means, in reality, that very few actions were actually taken in these areas to optimize the recovery of the vegetation, at least to the standards that it was before the fire. Post-fire mitigation has the potential to reduce soil erosion impacts by 63 to 77%, which is actually in a very straightforward result, and we wish to see more areas having mitigation treatments immediately after the fire. As a follow-up work, we are going to move now globally through a lot of, through time, also with more than one event as is described here through time, and we are going to look at from the global perspective. We also intend to do this analysis with more erosion models in order to make an ensemble, and we already provided an indicator as recover mentioned. Thank you for allowing me to present this work.